I'm wanting to focus mostly on the first reading that we have from Genesis. I think the book of Genesis is a book for us to be revisiting at this time in our world. There is stuff in here about how you move through disaster, difficulty, problems, political realities, harm, alienation, everything you can think of that you think is modern, right? This is what we're going through right now. Well, you read the book of Genesis, and they were going through all that stuff, too, in differing ways. And the mystery of it is that in these most surprising ways, this thing called reconciliation keeps happening. It's remarkably surprising how it happens. Now, some of the Bible stories are in the public domain. You all know the story of Noah's Ark, right? Whether you've ever gone to church or not, people have heard of Noah's Ark. And they've usually heard of Moses and the basket the baby Moses is put in the river and sent down the river. Whether you know the Bible or not, or the whole of the story and all the context around that story, many people know about a Moses basket made out of bulrushes and this baby put in the river. Many people also know of today's story about Jacob wrestling with the angel. That maybe all they've heard is, well, yeah, Jacob wrestled with an angel. Well, that's this story in the public domain, but it's also a story that begins, Rogan read from chapter 32 of Genesis. But Jacob is born in chapter 25, dies in chapter 49, so there's like 24 chapters here about Jacob's life with all the stuff that goes on. Now, I thought I could challenge anybody to read those 24 chapters, and if you say it comes up wanting in terms of, interesting, entertaining, if you think it's boring, I'll try to do a cartwheel for you. And, that's saying something. Not boring. Not out of touch with reality for today. These 24 chapters in Genesis. Incredible reconciliation. There are things in here that can move us to tears, that can break our heart. It's a lot of family relationship stuff. That breaks our heart all the time. There's brothers and how they don't get along most of the time until, by some amazing grace, they do. Steeped in honesty, the Bible acknowledges that we are captive to sin, that we cannot free ourselves, and that there are tensions in political structures, that there are the facts of brokenness, that there are all these challenging things. Humanity has never been really pretty. And the Bible also, at the same time, simultaneously, says to us how deeply in love with us, the people and creation God has made, God is. Imperfect as we all are, God is so in love with us. That's what the Bible wants us to hear. God counts us precious and of profound value. Profound value. That's how God sees you. And this comes clear in this story about Jacob and the wrestling angel. God goes to great lengths beyond what's imaginable to set us free for meaningful lives. Repeatedly, the Bible shows God is utterly devoted to people and creation, including utterly devoted to us and everything and everyone that God has made. God is love, and love can do no other than that. So today we hear this story of Jacob's intense wrestling with God, an angel. We don't really know what this figure is that's there, but it leaves Jacob limping. We might wonder, now how can a human person wrestle with God and still survive? I mean, God is far more powerful than we are. But the story shows us something about how God is. God chooses to meet Jacob on equal footing. Meet Jacob right where Jacob is. God engages humanity without losing divinity. This is the mystery of the gospel. And we call it incarnation. We call it Christmas. We also celebrate it every time we gather for Holy Communion. God comes to be with us, broken open for us, deep in the flesh. We glimpse this intimate choice of God to come near to us, even in this Old Testament story of Jacob, where the angel takes the initiative and then leaves Jacob changed and limping from the encounter. Jacob survives this wrestling match and even wins in deep ways. Jacob doesn't let this angel go until a blessing is given. But the angel wins also. A blessing is given, which God always wants to do. There's a pivotal moment in this story, several pivotal moments, but one particularly, where the angel can't get out of the grip of Jacob. And in this struggle, Jacob's hip is put out of joint. And the angel cries, "Let me go," because it is about to become sunrise. Jacob won't let go. He wants a blessing. He knows it's about to become sunrise. He knows that's risky. You know what was out there in the common understanding is if you see God, you will die. You cannot see God and live, was what they understood. Here, it's almost to be in the light of day when he could see, and he's wrestling, and he's so desperate for this blessing, he'll risk his own life for that. Jacob is endangered by his unwillingness to let go, but he's persistent. Like the widow in that story, widows had no standing in the politics of the day. The judge could easily just dismiss that little widow. "You're not important to me." Could have gotten away with it, just like today, there's all kinds of people on the margins whose needs are not met. But persistence, and you can be some of that persistence in our world today, persistently saying, no, everyone on the margin is just as precious in the eyes of God. Anything you do to say that lines you up with Jesus. That's what Jesus said. Everyone, no matter how marginalized they are, is precious in the eyes of God. But in this story, the angel gives Jacob the first thing that he wants, this blessing. Okay, I've got to bless you so you'll let go of me because the light's coming and you can't see me and live, so I got to get out of here. The blessing is given, but God also wins in that God doesn't give Jacob the second thing he asked for. Remember what that was? Jacob said, "What's your name? I want to know your name." And the angel says, "Why do you ask me my name? I'm out of here." He didn't, need to enter into this kind of chummy. No, I'm still God. But I'm going to bless you and be God. I'm still going to be your God. But I'm going to come in and amongst you and empower you to be all you can be, persistently acting for grace in your life for the sake of others as well. You know, Jacob wasn't living alone in the world. So instead of exchanging names, the angel changes Jacob. He's no longer called Jacob, he's now Israel. The angel leaves while Jacob now limps into the future. But what I've been thinking about in this week is the rest of the people in the story that really are around Jacob, right? He's not an isolated person in the world. Remember those people mentioned in the first line? They got one little slight notice in the story in verse 1. That night, Jacob got up and took his family. It lists it out in some of the versions. 2 wives, 2 maids, and 11 children. And they cross over the ford of the stream. The story says nothing about them from then on. Nothing about how they fared in that fateful night. Jacob is renamed, he's left limping, he has a blessing on him. But what are these others that are named at the very beginning with not names, just labels? Wives, maids, children, offspring. Were they really not remembered? Now, 11 children, think of that. That's a lot of little people to keep your eye on outside when you're in a new place. You got all your cousins around, right? You're along the stream, you know, just out there. Wow, I can imagine trying to keep control over these 11 children out there in the dark, in the newness of everything. And the text calls it a stream. You know, how big might a stream be? As big as this sanctuary? No, you know, not normally something really big would be called like a river, right? But if you call it a stream, you know, so maybe a long night wrestling match over here outside. Can you imagine that being real quiet? I mean, there might have been a lot of ruckus going over there. They probably are hearing it over here. Imagine what they're thinking, what's going on? We've been left over here. We don't know what's going on. I've appreciated the scholarship of feminist and liberation theologians over the years. And I know in seminary, Bilal, you're going to be taught with some of these feminist and liberation theologians and how they read the Bible. The way they read these stories in the Bible is different than a historic kind of reading that looks just at the main characters, that looks just mainly at the male characters, that looks predominantly at the power-holding characters. What they do is begin by looking at where are the marginalized people in this story. That's what a liberation theologian does. They interpret the Bible from the vantage point of the powerless, the voiceless, the nameless. Who doesn't have a name? The wives, the maids, the children. And who would be the least powerful in all that? The maids, really. And the children. That's where they go interpreting the story. Well, what happens to them? Where would God be for these people on the margins? Because what we learn in Jesus is that they count. They matter. We care about them. Today's story is not just a wrestling match between Jacob and an angel. It's a story of God's coming among the whole human hurting family and all of creation. We might say today, those of us that are ecology focused, that some of the most vulnerable is creation. You know, the little butterflies that are being endangered. We lose birds, species of birds every day. They are among the vulnerable. And I think God cares. You know, God created them too. All of humanity and creation matters to God, and God is up for whatever wrestling match it takes to set us free, because God has not given up on us, God's good creation, and God wants to use us and is hoping we will be as persistent as the widow in that story, and as Jacob, this one who was in a power position, but he wrestled because he was also in trouble with his brother who he had cheated twice, and he was afraid he was out to get him. But the way the story ends up is with this amazing, exquisite little story of reconciliation. If you have some time someday, read chapter 24 to 49 of Genesis. And if you find it boring, you let me know, and I'll try to do some cartwheel for you. But you won't, I don't think, find it boring. So my prayer is that we may not be afraid to do our own wrestling with God. God is love, and God always means us well. Trust this, that God who meets you on the road of your life loves you, knows you, and is with you no matter what, and always. Always. Amen.